My name is Shauna Christensen, and I'm the Geological Advisor at Osum.
Kristen Kampula-Brzanski. I'm a professional biologist and the Environmental Coordinator at Osum.
Jen Russell-Houston, VP, Vice President, Geoscience and Land.
Heather Harms, Environmental Manager at Osum.
Tammy Wilmer, I'm a geophysicist with Osum.
Geology is where that's the study of rocks, and I know a lot about how the rocks are deposited, how they were preserved, and that really helps in our exploration and in the development of oil.
I have some oil sand from up in the Fort McMurray area, and this is actually pieces of sand, little grains of sand that are actually have bit oil that's actually coating them. So this is part of the data that I look at to try to interpret what kind of reservoir I have, where I can find better reservoirs, and how to develop what I have.
There are certain rules that companies need to follow to make sure they're protecting the environment that they work in. My job is to make sure that those rules are followed.
And once the oil's out of the ground, my job is to help put the land back so that it can be used again.
Have you ever thrown a pebble into a lake and watched how the ripple it makes? My job is similar to that. In order to see underground, we make a loud sound like an explosion or a vibration, and this event creates sound waves that travel through the earth, just like the ripples on the water. The sound waves move differently through each layer of rock, and we are able to listen for its return at the surface by having little listening devices on the ground. This information is then used to create a picture of the earth below our feet. And with this picture and various other pieces of data, a team of us predict where oil and gas is located.
Growing up in a rural setting, I always had a strong connection to nature, and I knew that being outdoors had to be a part of my career.
I was a child that always loved science. I was one of those kids that asked a lot of questions, and I loved doing puzzles, and I always wondered how things worked.
By the time I was grade 2, I knew that I was going to be a geologist. At least I knew I was going to be studying rocks and minerals for the rest of my life.
I didn't even know geology was something you could make a career out of.
It wasn't until grade 9 or 10 when we were doing the career research component at school that I discovered a biologist was a position or a career that interested me.
Because I was interested in all things. So I liked biology and physics and chemistry, and geology was a science where I didn't have to choose. So I could do all things.
So ultimately, I did end up going to U of A. I ended up deciding that I wanted to be in the oil and gas industry, and I moved to Calgary.
When it was my time to go to university, the University of Alberta just started the Environmental and Conservation Sciences program. So I thought that would be a really interesting one to try, and I did, and I loved it.
I've had a wonderful career. I actually have been a geologist, working geologist for 37 years.
I feel like I'm making a difference.
One, going out into the field and collecting data.
The best part, though, I think, is when I get to put together all the data to answer some really complex problems. And sometimes that can take months to build, to pull all the data together. And then when the picture starts to emerge, that's my favorite part.
I love that every day I'm always learning and that there's always new problems to solve.
My favorite thing to do as a geologist is to show and share my knowledge of rocks to a team and to whoever will basically listen to me. I am quite happy to drag somebody to a microscope, or I want to look at core photos, I want to look at samples of rock, and the best place to do that is actually when we go into the field.
I would say my inspiration came from both my grandmothers. They were women of pure grit and knew how to live off the land.
My oldest sister was 6 years older than me, and she was in university when I was in junior high school.
Mrs. Gafuik was my elementary science teacher, and she knew that I was always interested in science, and she encouraged me to participate in the science fair.
You know, they were the essence of sustainability before it was a popular term.
And she'd always tease me that I was going to be a geophysicist just like her one day.
Having the encouragement of teachers has been imperative.
If we all adopted some of those practices into our own life, it would go a long way in reducing waste.
When it was my time to enter university, she suggested that I take a geology course. So I took my first Geology 101 course, and I never looked back, and it was one of the best decisions I've made.
Thank you, Mrs. Gafuic, for always encouraging me that I could be a scientist.
But the best job I ever had was I was a naturalist in a provincial park for 2 summers.
Radiology, I've always enjoyed the medical side of things, and radiology is probably the most similar to geophysics, except you're looking inside someone's body rather than the earth.
It would be something in the environmental sciences field. That's my passion.
Maybe a painter. That's the other thing. Okay, so for 4 months I'll be a naturalist, and then for the other 8 months I'll paint.
Although I don't do so good around blood, so maybe that's a sign to just stick with what I'm doing.
Go for it. I would say listen to your intuition and not what other people had to say about it.
Go for it. The path has been blazed by so many before us. It's such an interesting and rewarding choice of careers, and every door is open. So just pick one and enter and go.
Follow your passions, and even sometimes if it feels impossible, just keep working hard and you'll be able to do anything.
I think that especially if you're going to go into science and you're not exactly sure which field to go into, take a variety of courses in your first year and try to make sure that you take all the disciplines in high school if you can, because whatever one that you find the most interesting is probably the one you're going to do the best at in school. And then when you narrow down where you really want to be, go and talk to some people that work in that field. If you decide you want to be a geologist, come and see me.
Stay curious. The world is fascinating and complex, and there's big problems to solve, and we need brilliant people who are creative and passionate. And so that's my advice, is if there's a spark of interest, stick with it. And because we need you.